Okay, Dennis Young here, the Primitive Substance Podcast channel, and this has been really fantastic. Rhys Chatham, thank you for coming back. You are the 50th podcast here on the channel. I never thought I'd get this far, but thank you for coming on again.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for taking me down memory's lane, Dennis.
Oh, I'm great, and everybody's enjoyed it too. Everybody I've talked to has really enjoyed everything about it. So let's keep going on here as with your story.
Well, in the last episode, if you like, we talked about a piece for 100 electric guitars that I did called a Crimson Grail.
Okay.
Which was commissioned by the city of the Paris and for a thing we have here every October called La Nuit Blanche, the White Night. And we premiered this piece in a cathedral-like structure called Sacré-Cœur, which is on the top of the hill. You can see all of Paris from there.
That sounds beautiful.
And it's an incredible space with a 15-second delay. But what I'm going to do now is back up a little bit so that we talked quite a bit about the work I've done with multiple electric guitars, hundreds of electric guitars. And I had mentioned briefly that I had been losing my hearing from all these guitars, and so I wanted to play a softer instrument. And I think I made a mistake the last time. I said I started trumpet in the 90s, but in fact, I started playing trumpet in 1983.
Oh, wow.
And was largely self-taught. But then by the 90s, I realized I needed to study seriously with somebody here in France. I had moved to France in 1989.
Yeah, I was wondering about that when you moved. So it's 1989?
Yeah, as I said the last time, I was married to a French choreographer named Isabelle Marteau. And we had Francois Mitterrand as president, who devoted 1% of the budget, national budget, to the arts. And so my wife said, you can stay here, Rhys, in New York City, but I'm moving back to France to get some of this dough.
Oh, there you go.
And that's exactly what she did. And I've always liked France on my tours there. And so I moved with her, and I never looked, well, I've been back to the States many times, but I've been living here since then in France. And finally, I'm going to become French, and I'll get my French nationality hopefully next month.
Oh, fantastic!
So pray for me.
I will.
I have to pass the language test first and the history test. But in any case, I started studying. I decided to, I'm classically trained, but I had never been trained in the jazz tradition. I'd done a lot of improvisation with a group called Musica Electronica Viva with a composer named Frederick Chevsky and Richard Teitelbaum and Alvin Curran. And Frederick had brought that group to New York in the 70s and kind of merged the improvisation community, meaning Carl Berger, musicians like that, and Anthony Braxton, with musicians like Tom Johnson, myself, Garrett List. So I'd done improvisation, but I hadn't studied specifically what a jazz musician would study. So I worked with a fellow, also on trumpet. I've been playing for 10 years, but I was having a problem getting high notes.
Oh, okay.
And so I studied with an American fellow, actually, here in Paris named Andrew Crocker, who had a technique that he learned from a French guy named Pichereau, who's quite well known in brass circles. And it's a technique for putting the trumpet on the embouchure and with hardly any pressure, and through special tongue positioning,
How about
being
that?
able to get very high notes.
Oh,
And after about a year of studying, for the technical stuff, I learned how to improvise over 2-5-1 chords. 2-5-1 chords are the standard jazz progression. 2-5-1,
okay.
2-5-1, 2-5-1, and etc. And how to play in a blues scale in any key at any speed. And I learned all those things, but also to be able to get these high notes without putting too much pressure on my lips. And pretty soon, I was playing in the range of Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh, wow.
Which, if you're a composer, what you write for trumpet, and to be safe, is on the normal staff, the G clef, up to a high C. And you can pretty much write up to that and be sure the trumpet player will play it. But the C that I was able to play was the C above that. We call it the high triple C. And so my problem became hitting low notes. I had to practice low notes, and and was able to incorporate into this my own music. And so the first person I did that with, I mentioned this the last time, was with an English composer who was heavily into electronica named Martin Wheeler, who was living here in France. And I played trumpet through fuzz box and delays.
Okay, I was going to ask you.
Remember? And Martin did all the electronics, and he's a very talented producer and composer, and did a fabulous job. And
that's great.
Ninja Tune put it out, which was the record label of the group Cold Cut. And as I said before, we made the Wire Rewind, 50 best albums of the year, which pleased both of us no end, and we were very, very proud. And then later on, I did some other collaborations with Jonathan Kane, percussion, and an electronica composer named Danny Hamilton from New York, who went under the moniker of DJ Elated System. And we put out an album also with Ninja Tune called Septile. And then the Wire magazine contacted me and hooked me up with British improvisers, a wonderful guitarist named Gary Smith, and a fantastic virtuosic keyboard player named Pat Thomas.
Wow.
And a DJ named, a Japanese DJ living in London named Mieko Suzuki. And together we created an album that the Wire magazine put out under its own label called, what's that album called? Something like, I can't remember the name of the album. All I remember is it had an octopus on it, and it was a very, very, very beautiful cover. But somehow, we did a bit of touring. Martin himself was more of a producer, and the technology hadn't evolved enough at that time where he could take his equipment on the road, so we couldn't tour. With Jonathan Kane and Danny Hamilton, we did a couple of gigs, but somehow the work wasn't coming in. And for the British group, we did some little tour in Great Britain, and we played in Berlin, but somehow that fizzled out, and the work kind of dried up. And the 100 guitars, we had toured. We had mounted the 100 guitars and in pretty much every major city in France.
That sounds incredible.
And in Australia, and in Berlin, as I said before, and in London.
Now, where did you find all these musicians at? All these guitarists? Did you have
each time we played, as I said the last time, each time we played, the promoter recruited the musicians
Oh, okay.
in the city because otherwise it would have been too expensive to bring them all from
I'm sure.
Paris. And I brought a team. I brought Jonathan Kane on drums and Ernie Brooks on bass from New York. And I had a team of musicians from Paris, notably Jean-François Pauvros, Kent Condon, Duncan Youngerman, Claude Alvarez-Pereira, and Dominique Pichon. And we would descend on the city, teach the music, which was about 70 minutes worth of material over 5 days.
Okay.
And then we would mount a performance or performances. And so that's how that worked. We got it down to, with the other pieces, I just want to say hastily, with A Secret Rose and A Crimson Grail, we got it down to 2 days of rehearsal because we realized committing 100 musicians to 5 days, 5 evenings of rehearsal was a bit too much. And so that worked out. But by the end of, by the mid-90s, the work had fizzled out because we had pretty much exhausted all the places we could play in Europe. And I had tried to get this brass thing going with me on trumpet, but that kind of fizzled out. And so I kind of went underground a little bit and concentrated on my improving my trumpet with my studies with Andrew Crocker and using the Pichero technique. And also another thing that happened was, you know, when you have a kid, you have to be responsible for the kid.
I'm sure.
And we musicians, you know, aren't known for having a steady paycheck. And I won't go into it in detail, but I'm sure you can fill in between the lines.
Oh, yeah.
And so I realized I needed a steady income. So I started teaching, and I worked at the University de Paris 5 and also in private institutions just to have a steady paycheck. And I kind of went underground from the scene and didn't perform that much. But now we'll get to the new stuff for today.
Okay, that's great.
A producer named Jeff Hunt decided it was time to pull me up from obscurity. Hey. And Jeff Hunt, of course, was the label boss of Table of the Elements Records.
Oh, okay.
And so he got in touch with me and said, Rhys, I'm going to do the same thing for you that I did for Tony Conrad.
How about that?
Tony Conrad, of course, was known very, very much as a filmmaker, having made pioneering use of flicker technique with a film that he called The Flicker. And he, 10 years earlier than me, found himself in the same situation as me with a kid. And he had to get into teaching to support the kid. And he had kind of disappeared in the world of academia. And Jeff had put out everything he ever composed. And Tony Conrad, of course, is a violin player that plays violin in just intonation. And he had, like me, had played in Lamont Young's group, but he was in the original group with John Cale.
Oh, how about that?
He and John Cale left Lamont's group, the Theater of Eternal Music, when there was an argument about authorship of The Tortoise, His Dreams and Journeys. And Tony had played a drone in that, as did John Cale on viola. And then there was a rift over authorship. So Tony had split, and so did John Cale. But Tony went on and produced privately music, and Jeff put it all out.
How about that?
All of a sudden, in the Wire magazine and in the American press, everybody was talking about Tony Conrad not in the framework of film, but in the framework of this fantastic music that he was making on violin. And so Jeff said, I'm going to do the same thing for you.
Oh, very nice.
So in 2002, he put out a boxed set of essentially everything I had ever composed for electric guitar. And he even put out the first piece I ever composed professionally, which was a piece for two gongs called, appropriately enough, Two Gongs. Which sounds like, well, it sounded like drastic classicism. In fact, drastic classicism, that piece I told you about that was very noisy, was basically me trying to get guitars to imitate a couple of Chinese gongs. But he put that out, which was from 1971. And on the label was Guitar Trio and Die Dörnergötter, The Thunder Gods, a brass piece I had written. I had written a series of brass pieces, fully notated. And he put one called Waterloo. As well as the premiere release of An Angel Moves Too Fast to See, the first piece I composed for 100 electric guitars.
Oh, that's
so
really
all
neat.
that came out in a 3 CD box set with a 90-page booklet with writings
I didn't know that.
by myself and by Tony Conrad. Lee Ronaldo of Sonic Youth had something in there. And so he really, when this came out, there was a lot of talk, and he really put me back on the path. And so I'm very grateful to him. You know, I didn't talk the last time about the groups that, you know, I had left for France.
No.
But even before I left for France, you know, there was me doing work with multiple electric guitars, and there was my friend Glenn Branca doing work, and there was a lot of talk about that. But then these two other groups came on the scene called Sonic Youth.
Oh, of course.
And, who needs no introduction, and another group called Swans.
Oh, they're great.
I just had to share this one story.
Sure.
One time I was sitting on my stoop. I was living on 3rd Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. No, first and 2nd Avenue. And a bunch of my buddies came walking down the street. It was in the evening, and it was this Sonic Youth. And I said, you know, hi guys, hi Thurston, hi Kim, and they were going to play at the Pyramid Club.
Oh, we played there,
which I discussed in the last session, and I said, boy, you know, they had just had a big write up in the Village Voice, which everybody, you know, was reading back then. And I said, boy, you guys are really cooking. And they said, yeah, you and Glenn had your turn. Now it's our turn.
Oh, and, about that.
They said that in a nice way. And it was funny. And you know, I must say that with Sonic Youth, they took a lot of ideas that were prevalent on the downtown scene at that time. A lot of the ideas of music of long duration and working with noise and sound is sound, and mixed it with pop in a way that nobody had ever done before.
Right.
And,
I know that.
So that was really cool.
Yeah.
And Swans, I mean, what can I say? They were just super radical.
They were.
And with Sue Hannell on guitar, and
they were intense.
And Jonathan was in the original version of that band, and then Norman Westbrook, I think, took on the guitar responsibilities later on. Not too later on; he was pretty early, and he's still with the band as far as I know.
Oh, okay.
And Mike, had this unique bass playing. I lent him a bass once, and he took all the frets out of it. I got really, really pissed off. So, Mike,
No.
if you're listening, I
There
wasn't
you
really
go.
pissed off. I was only kidding. And in fact, I got home later and realized I liked it with the frets
How about
taken off.
that?
Yeah. So anyway, Jeff Hunt had put out this box set, and so thanks to that, people started taking interest, and I hooked up. Again, I had got out of contact with that agent I was telling you about, Francis Falsetto, the one who put out all those wonderful Ethiopian music records, and started working with him again. And he started finding work for the 100 guitars. And so work started creeping in. And then he finally was the one who got this commission arranged.
Right.
Zachary Kerr from the city of Paris. And from that point on, I was on the map again.
Wow.
And
what a story.
I still had to teach, but I was in a transition period of having my work performed, and thanks to the releases that came out and this performance at Zachary Kerr and in other places. And then again, it was the Table of Elements Records that brought me back to the United States, because most of my touring had been in Europe. And Jeff, the first thing he did is he organized a tour consisting of me playing guitar trio. Jonathan Kane had a band of his own called, I believe it was called November, which was a kind of a blues band.
Right.
And Tony Conrad doing a violin solo. And so we got on a bus and we toured.
That was something.
I don't know, 12 cities or something like that, and ended up in playing at South by Southwest.
How about that?
And so this was my introduction back into the States. And then he hooked me up with a booking agency called Front Porch Productions, and who had lots of connections with rock clubs all over the States. And because Jeff wanted us to, he had heard me do the original version of Guitar Trio. Up to then, I've been doing a truncated version of Guitar Trio of only 8 minutes. But when we played in Atlanta, I think it was at the iDrum, I worked with local musicians, and we had a band of, instead of 3 guitars, we had a band of, I think it was 10 electric guitars.
Wow. Okay.
And Jeff got really excited when he heard it. And the version we did was 45 minutes long, instead of 8 minutes, which was the original version that I had done with when I played it with Nina Canal, Wharton Tears, and Glenn Branca. And Jeff loved it so much, he said, "Look, let's do a tour of this, and we'll get the musicians together." And we got a core. No, that was for. We had a core band of musicians when we played the South by Southwest, but no, for the Guitar Trio tour,
right?
We hired the musicians on place. So if we played in Minneapolis, we had the bass player from Husker Du.
How about that? Oh, wow, that's great.
And each place, when we played in New York, my friends from Sonic Youth all played, and other buddies from New York like Alan Licht and people like that. And, of course, Jonathan played drums and Ernie played bass. but in every city, it was a different group of people with the local musicians. And one time on the first tour, somebody in the audience screamed, "Guitar trio is my life."
How about
And
that?
so we liked it so much, we decided to call it the Guitar Trio is My Life tour.
How about that? Well, why
We
not?
played, I think, 15 cities. And
Boy.
and it was a real gas. And we just did Guitar Trio, which we were calling G3, because calling it guitar, I think in Montreal we played with 12 guitarists, and
these were done at rock clubs, like actual like
most
clubs?
of them were in rock clubs.
Oh, okay.
And some of them, I
Interesting.
think we played at the Walker Arts Center, and some of them were art spaces. Whatever we could get.
Did you have a sound man, your own sound man with you, or did you have to deal with the club?
We use the club sound person.
Oh, okay.
And it worked out fine for the most part. Anyway, so I remember what I wanted to say. And Jeff, he's crazy. Jeff Hunt. So he decided to record. We recorded. Oh, wait a minute. We did have a sound man. Oh, I'm so sorry if you.
That's all right. No, that's okay. I'm glad I mentioned it.
We had a sound man who recorded all the concerts.
Oh, better yet.
And we got really close, and I can't. I'm having, in French we say a trou de mémoire, and so it'll come to me later. But we'll put his name on the YouTube thing if
sure,
if it doesn't come to me. But anyway, he recorded all the concerts. He did a great job, and he was the sound person. That's why it sounded so good.
It must have, because some of these sound men are terrible, either good, bad, or ugly. So
this sound man was great, and
smart.
He knew the piece. And one time, the drummer in one of the cities hadn't listened to the recordings that I sent, and he just didn't do his homework and had no idea what the piece was. So fortunately, the sound man was able to tell him what to play and play him a little bit of it beforehand. So he really saved the day. And so Jeff Hunt decided to take all of these recordings and put them out as a box set on the Table of the Elements Records. And so that came out, let's see, that came out in 2008.
Okay.
That came out. The tour, I think, was in 2007 or something, mid 2000s. And the box set came out. And so we had New York with Sonic Youth playing in it, Guitar Trio. In Chicago, we had Tortoise, the members from Tortoise.
Oh, yeah, I know those guys.
Birdsong playing it. So that was really great.
Great cast.
That he did that. And then Front Porch Productions got us, hooked us up with Lincoln Center, who have a
I remember that.
And I did a different version of Crimson Grail, and I had to do a different version because the version I did for Sacré-Cœur was site-specific, which means that I had written it especially for the acoustics and the 15-second delay of Sacré-Cœur in Paris. And at Lincoln Center, we were going to be playing outdoors. And so there wasn't a delay. So I had to rewrite the piece and tweak it so it would work without delay. And so the version that we did there was quite different. And also, Front Porch Productions knew that I had only 126 guitars in Sacré-Cœur, so they wanted to up the number to 200. And so the organizers at Lincoln Center found 200 guitars, and Front Porch Productions facilitated the organization of all of this and did a great job in producing the concert.
I know, I was there.
Making sure everything went smoothly. And the record boss for None Such Records was there and decided that he wanted to put out that version.
Oh,
so
great.
We put that version out on None Such Records.
Oh, I know them. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic show. I mean, it was hard.
Oh, you were there for that? Oh, wait. Of course, we played on it together.
It was hard. It was very hard for us to follow up with that. It was fantastic. And then we played afterward, but it was such an amazing experience. Yeah, we were there.
I thought it was a good program. I quite enjoyed listening to you guys afterwards. And the music was different enough, and that, it took the people to, they had just had this religious experience.
Right.
And this brought them down. Let's dance.
So that's true. You're right. That is.
And so it was a wonderful evening.
I have some video of it. I think it's online. Some clips from both of us playing there. So it was fantastic.
Yeah. And for the final chord, everybody, Jim Farrat was in the audience.
Oh,
boy. The guy who danced who I told you about. And he led the audience. He's such a show person. And he stood up and put his hands in the air like he was praying to God, or just letting the goddess, and letting the sound wash down. And the entire audience got up and did that too.
I think I remember that.
Remember that?
Yeah, that was amazing.
It was an amazing moment.
It was a really special night.
It really was. Thank God it didn't rain. Remember the year before we got rained out?
Oh yeah.
Everyone was so disappointed. Right. But luckily they did it again, and we got to play with you guys.
Oh yeah, it was just such an experience. You're right. It was like a religious experience. The overtones were just absolutely amazing. All those harmonics just coming out. Yeah.
Choirs and choirs
of
angels.
Oh my gosh. It
or
was
demons, or whatever you want to.
Oh, it was really something.
But how are we doing on time?
Let's see. Well, we got a little time left. I'm looking at least another 15, 20 minutes. Because we'll definitely we'll do another session for sure. But, another 20 minutes.
Let's see what happens.
Okay.
So this was a kind of pinnacle of my work with electric guitars. I mean, what are you going to do after 200 electric guitars? You're going to write for 1,000. One could, but I wasn't sure how far I wanted to push that idea. So we continued to mount the 100 electric guitars when we could. It's a lot of work, so doing it once a year or twice a year was what one could expect. But in the meantime, I'm a musician. I like playing. And so I wanted to continue playing. And my trumpet, I had gotten rather good on trumpet, and had continued working on that front. And I had put together a band with Kevin Shea on drums. Do you know Kevin? He's in a band called Taliban.
No, I don't know him though. Well,
no, not Taliban. Talibang.
Oh, Talibang. No, I never heard their stuff.
Yeah, they're an improvisatory band.
Okay.
And he's a drummer. He can play rock, but he's played with Peter Evans, the trumpet player.
I know him.
Fabulous trumpet player and a very, very good jazz player. And we had formed a band with him and a French guitarist named Jean-Marc Montera, and had started playing in France. And a label from Brooklyn called Northern Spy.
Oh, I've heard of them.
Yeah, they got in touch with me.
That's a good label.
Yeah, they really were just starting out, and I think I was the first person that they contacted. And they said that they wanted to do 3 albums with me. And so this was a very, very interesting deal. And the first album I did with them, which is my favorite, is called Outdoor Spell.
Okay.
And it's with me on trumpet and Kevin Shea on drums and Jean-Marc Montera on electric guitar. It's I still like it. When did it come out? Must have come out in the second half of the 2000s.
Okay.
And then I did another album with them, which was based on a written piece that I had done. And then a final album with a Brooklyn-based band called Oneida.
Oh, I never heard of them.
Oneida is a kind of rock improvisation band, and they do very vigorous work and had numerous albums out. And so we collaborated and put out the third album on Earthen Spy with them. And since then, maybe we will get done. Since then, I've continued to mount the 100 electric guitars whenever we can, and I'm still promoting that. But what I've been doing since then is collaborating with other artists and putting records out with them.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, I collaborated with a well-known composer named Charlemagne Palestine. And Charlemagne was very happy with this collaboration because he was sort of in the 60s and 70s a big brother figure for me. And he was very, very big on the New York scene in the 70s and was kind of running neck and neck with Philip Glass and Steve Reich. The piece that he's known for is this piece called Strumming Music, which is a piece for Bosendorfer piano. And like myself, he works very, very closely with the overtone series, and he plays a single chord, and you listen to the choirs of overtones coming out of the Bosendorfer piano. He got known for doing that, and he's still working with that, although he does many other things. He played the carillon at St. Thomas's Church in New York.
About that. Well, that
so
must be nice.
He has a bunch of carillon pieces, which are really special, unique. So we did a 3-album set that came out in the mid-2000s on the Belgium label SubRosa.
Okay.
And SubRosa is famous for doing a series of records called the Made to Measure series that a lot of artists that we know, you and I know, like Jean Lurie and people like that, when they did music for a film or Made to Measure, they would put it out on SubRosa on this series.
Okay.
And so it's that label. And so I played on that label. I played a guitar and just intonation on one of the CDs. On another, I played guitar. I played on guitar. Another, I played, I think, trumpet. Yes.
All right.
And I may have played flute. I can't remember, or a combination of guitar and trumpet. And so that was a really nice album that came out. Then I did who else did I work with back then? I did a record with, do you know an artist named, a musician named Zev?
Oh, of course. Him? Zev, the guy with all the metal pipes and all that. Oh, he was great. Back in the day, he was
May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
He passed away about 5 years ago.
Oh, too bad. He was intense.
Oh, well, he was.
Oh, man.
His look was intense.
Yes.
And the way he worked with metal was very, very intense.
He was like from another planet, that guy.
Yeah.
It was amazing stuff.
Tell me about it. He was from Saturn. But anyway, he was based for a long time in Holland, but during a certain period during the 2000s, maybe around 2010, around then, he came to live in France, and he was based in Nantes, which is a city on the Atlantic coast. Beautiful city with lots of cultural things going on, a great jazz club. And anyway, he was based there, and he was put up by a kind of an artist commune. And so he visited me in Paris, and he proposed that we work together and come up with a set that we would record. And at the time, he was having back problems, and so carrying heavy metal was something that he could really do. And so he had come up with this drum thing that you would hit. It was like almost like a game, it was for kids. Right. But he hooked it up to a sampler that had really great sounds. And so he came to my studio. I had a studio in the 18th arrondissement of Paris at that time. And we recorded together.
Oh, that must have been fantastic.
And, unfortunately, the record didn't come out before his death.
Oh, that's too bad.
It came out with on a record called, it was actually a Paris-based label called EntreFer.
Right.
EntreFer.
Okay.
EntreFer. Between the Steel.
Oh, that's a great title.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, the producers of this label are musicians, artists, visual artists, musicians themselves that do amazing things with sound. So it was appropriate that they would put out a record that had Zev on it, because it was very close to their music. And so I'm glad that record came out. I worked with another artist who passed away, also named Ghédalia Tazartès.
Never heard of
him. And he's not so well known in America, but he's, I'll give you the spelling for him by email. But he's quite well known in France, and it's a singer, and his voice was shamanistic almost in the way it worked. And I had actually known him when he came to visit the States in the late 70s. And we would go together to CBGB's to check out who was playing. But somehow when I moved to Paris, we never hooked up. But then a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, we decided to do a record together. And by that time, I had moved to a studio in the 6th arrondissement of Paris, which was actually, do you know who Serge Terepnin is? I think I talked about.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
He's the inventor of the Serge synthesizer.
Right.
I had met him at NYU and studied electronics with him. And I had to leave my place in the 18th. And so I put a little notice on Facebook saying, hey, I'm looking for a place, to my Parisian friends. Serge is French and French American. And he said, well, you can have my old bedroom.
How about that?
He doesn't live there anymore, but he had maintained this small room, which I turned into my studio. And so many thanks to Serge. I owe him a great debt, both for the studies I did with him in electronics, as well as being able to use this studio.
That's great.
Just where we recorded the album with Ghédalia Tazartès, which also came out, SubRosa. What were you going to say?
No, go ahead. No, that's really interesting how you met all these unique people to record with. I mean, it's just fascinating. It really is, isn't it?
Go ahead.
That's it. It's just
Yeah,
I'm
well, the
saying.
story goes on. Uh, uh, After Ghédalia, I started working with two other French composers, and the one that who the record came out most recently is with a French guitarist composer named David Fenech.
Okay.
He works with toy instruments and with electric guitar and doing interesting things with it. And we had played together 10 years ago or 12 years ago, and then somehow that fizzled out, and he started. I was uniquely playing trumpet at that point,
Okay.
and he had just decided to start working with a group of other musicians. A wonderful French cornet player, and I'm having a trou de mémoire again. And but the name will come back to me. Anyway, he worked with this trumpet player, and but then we decided to start working together again about a couple of years ago, and we put out a record with me on flute, because I started playing transverse flute again.
Okay.
Did I tell you? Yeah, I had surgery done on my mouth.
Okay.
So I had to stop playing trumpet for a while. So I started playing flute again. Everything's okay now. And
that's good.
Again. So on this record, I think I'm playing flute and I'm playing electric guitar. And David Fenech is on these small instruments. I'll give links to all of these things so people can listen to them. And that came out on an Austrian label called, I think it's called Klang Gallerie, which means Gallery of Sound. And Klang's Klang. And so, maybe we're going to get done because...
maybe. We're close. We've got, about 15 minutes, I think. I don't know if it's going to shut off.
Oh, yeah, that'll definitely do it because...
Let's go. Sure.
The label, the record that's about to come out, I'm really excited about. It's with a French composer, another French composer, guitarist named Nico Guererro. Now, this is someone that I've worked with on and off for the last 10 years. He's played in the context of my bands. Whenever I need a musician, I'd call him up and he'd play. And so we decided to do a record together. And a few years ago, we had done a series of concerts with me on flute and trumpet and electric guitar. And Nico on electric guitar going through all kinds of beautiful, beautiful effects. And so we recorded all of this, and Nico put together a compilation, which is going to come out. It's supposed to come out this summer, but the guy keeps promising it. But I listened to the mix that Nico did, and I thought it was great. But you know how when you send something, your record to someone who does mastering,
right?
Well, we sent it. Have you ever heard of a composer named Lawrence English?
Oh yeah, of course.
He's an Australian composer.
Yeah,
and he's heavily into Ableton Live and into sound, and he just got his doctorate in sound engineering, I think. And he's as a side business. I went into teaching. He went into mastering.
Okay.
And so he mastered the album, and Nico and I couldn't believe it.
That good, huh?
It's just fantastic.
And is this out yet? Is it out? Is the record?
Well, the record label is run by a musician named Sandra Shukla. Do you know of him?
No, not that. Might have. I don't know.
Chandra Shukla Shukla.
Okay.
And the name of the label is Erototox Decondings.
Wow, that's a
Yeah,
mouthful. That's a
it
mouthful.
certainly is. And but I can get my mouth around it. Erotics
That's funny.
Decodings. And he says it's going to come out in the summer.
Oh,
So we'll
great.
see. Maybe he's made a strategic decision to. Yeah, go ahead.
So we're getting near the end, but are you going to do any touring in the States, or are you planning to play live anymore with
So what I did a private concert just last month involving 60 electric guitars, bass and drums. Now I'm not at liberty to say anything about this private concert for various reasons, but what I realized is that people want to hear, when they think of Rhys Chatham, they think of electric guitars.
Right.
I'm a composer who plays trumpet. I'm not a virtuosic trumpet player. I'm a person who's devoted, like Ben Neal, their entire life to playing trumpet.
Right.
I can do interesting things on trumpet, but people want to hear more electric guitar, especially with guitar armies, if you will.
Right, I'm sure.
I did something new for the 60 electric guitars, and I said, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I've got to start writing more in this vein.
Right.
So what the plan is to take perhaps a more manageable size and start developing pieces here in Paris.
Oh, great.
And so I'm going to go in that direction. And as soon as the pieces are developed, I plan to tour it. And so no tour coming up for the moment. Another visual artist friend of mine, Jacob Cassay, who in fact I put out a record of mine on a record label in New York called Primary Elements.
Okay.
Back in the 2000s, he said, "Look, do a piece for electric guitars, and if you want to do some weird thing with trumpet, do that every once in a while, but give the people what they want." And I like doing it, so that's the plan for right now.
Wow.
To write for electric guitars and develop them here in Paris. And but in the meantime, if anybody out there listening wants to hire one of my trumpet configurations or flute,
great.
Or solo things, don't hesitate to contact me on my website, and I can do concerts for highly competitive prices.
I'll put and I'll send me a description of, like last time, what some YouTube links and everything else that we spoke about today. And Rhys, this has been a real pleasure and a privilege to talk to you. It's been an honor. You've been, all these years been just trying to expand and do some really great music. And I want to thank you for doing this.
It's been great talking to you.
You too.
Thank you. And I hope to see you next time I'm in New York.
I hope so. We'll have to get together. Great. Nice talking to you again. Have a good day at night there in France. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.